The following program is brought to you in living color on A2B. Hi everyone, our guest in this episode of Swim Talk is one of the best age group coaches around, and she's right in our backyard near Houston, Texas. First Colony Swim Team's head age group and developmental coach, Dana Skelton. You age group and younger coaches are encouraged and welcome to contact her via email and social media platforms, which we will carefully, deliberately, purposefully, and plottingly spell out for you at the end of this episode, especially for the slow hearers in our vast worldwide audience. That info will also be available in the details section on our podcast platforms and YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get started.
The comments and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect those of their employers, friends, families, or casual acquaintances.
Hello and welcome to Swim Talk A2B, the second most exciting podcast in the world, bringing you news and views about competitive swimming or anything else we can think of to fill the time. I'm Dana Abbott, coming to you from Katy, Texas, my fair city, and the co-host of this scintillating podcast, coming to us from somewhere in Bay City, Bob Button. Bob, I have no idea where you are this week. Where are you?
Home.
He's behind a wobbly wheel cart at the HEB, making his way down the pickles and condiments aisle.
Trying to find those gator pickles that they no longer carry.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, so how's it going in Bay City
Magic
today?
Swamp dust. Okay, you got to ask me that again.
Okay,
I talked right over you.
Yeah, you did. Okay.
All right, you going to ask me?
I will ask you.
Go ahead. Okay. Don't let me stop you. I'm ready.
So, Bob, how's
Anytime.
it going?
What's the holdup?
Wait a minute. Let me get my notes. Wait a second. Is it good there? Oh, here we go. So, Bob, how is it going in Bay City today?
I thought you'd never ask.
I didn't think I'd ever get a chance.
Never better.
There we go. Never better. Well, we've got an exciting interview guest this week, and we'll introduce her in just a minute. We'll be right back. This segment brought to you by Texas Traditions Restaurant in beautiful downtown Old Katy, Texas. Across the street and less than 2 football fields away from the world-famous No Label Brewing Company. Open for almost 20 years, this friendly, family-owned and operated restaurant prepares food like Mom used to make, including their award-winning meatloaf every Thursday. Stop by and have a tall glass of sweet tea with your meal, or a timely brew from No Label. And tell Denise the guys from Swim Talk sent you.
Hello.
There she is.
How are you?
Weird.
Don't ask. I mean, never better.
I'm sure you've heard of the phrase going to the dogs, haven't you?
Yes.
Well, we're coming to you today from the Rescued Pets Department at Swim Talk World Headquarters, and this segment is brought to you by Blackie and Goldie.
All right. I'm going to turn my mic off for a second and then scream and yell. Speak with him.
I'm going to guess that was Goldie. He can't answer me. He's got 2. They're siblings. He rescued them. Good for him.
Oh, that was our first puppy, was a rescue.
All of mine have been rescues. In fact, I've got one. I don't know where she is now, but I guess it was 2012. She was set to be put down on a Monday morning at 7, and I rescued her at 4 in the afternoon on Sunday. I had been involved with some rescue groups, and they were posting videos of these dogs, all over the place. And there was this one dog from the LaPorte shelter that for some reason I just got emotionally attached to. She was happy, she smiled, but she had Demodex mange and don't even know where she came from. But I just fell in love with her, and I said, well, I don't want to adopt one, but I will do a medical foster until she gets her hair back and looks pretty and all that stuff. And of course, here we are, 9 years later. Foster failure.
Wow.
Well, I'm back, and that heavy breathing is Goldie. They wanted to trade crates for a second and see what the other one had. And
This episode of Swim Talk is brought to you by local animal shelters and rescues in your area. Check them out and offer to foster or adopt today. Rescue pets make some of the best animal companions you could hope for. Don't shop, adopt. And by EddieReesBook.com, your best source to purchase the chronicled life of one of the most praised and recognized swim coaches in the world in the best-selling book by famed author Chuck Warner, Eddie Rees, Coaching Swimming, Teaching Life, also available on Amazon.com. This week on Swim Talk, we have gone into the coaching ranks of the Houston, Texas area, Sugar Land, Texas to be specific. We have got a top age group coach with us, Dana Skelton from First Colony Swim Team. Dana, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for the invitation.
We're glad to have you. Can you give us a little background of how you got into swimming, maybe a little bit about your high school and or college experience and your coaching journey?
Yes. So I started swimming when I was young. We moved around a little bit when I was young, and so I kind of stopped during some of those moves. I got back into swimming kind of midway through high school, my junior year, swam high school, junior, senior year, and went on to swim D3. Pretty cool experience. I loved it. From there, as I was finishing up my experience in college, I started coaching for a USA team out in California. And that's kind of where I got my first taste of USA swimming. I never swam USA swimming growing up, which I think is kind of an interesting perspective compared to a lot of coaches in USA swimming. I coached a little bit of summer league, through high school, college, when I would come home in the summers. But like I said, I kind of started USA swimming in college, started coaching it, graduated out in California, moved back to Texas, and that's where I started with FCST. I've been with them going on about 14 years now. I did at one point, I think it's part of my journey, an interesting part of my journey. I left coaching at one point. I kind of got into teaching. It was not what I kind of expected. So I got back into coaching. And like I said, I've been with FCST for 14 years now. I'm with my group is the 910s. I'm lucky enough throughout all my years with FCST, I've been with every group on the team. I've coached lead assistant with every group, which I think is probably one of the coolest things about my coaching. I've seen every level, and I think it's helped me the most. When it comes to my coaching, I think looking back on it, where I am now, there have been probably two big milestones. The first one, I got invited to a committee meeting, one of the USA Swimming committee meetings. They're kind of looking for some outside perspectives. It was interesting being in that meeting with some pretty amazing age group coaches from around the country and realizing how much of a bubble I am in with my coaching, really only being in two LSCs ever, two teams ever. And so that really jump-started me. Like I went and I joined a bunch of committees at that point. I started getting involved with the LSC. I reached out to anybody I could. I mean, I've sent emails to coaches I have never met just because somebody recommended you should ask this person that question. And all that came just from that one meeting. The next, I think, biggest thing that's changed my coaching is becoming a mother. And I got 3 little girls. 2 of them now are in the sport. And so having that perspective of being a sport parent and a swim parent has really changed how I coach and how I view coaching.
I saw on the First Colony website that you are the head developmental coach. So do you oversee some other coaches, and how is your involvement with them?
Yes. So I have the kind of the top 9-10 group. And then I work with and kind of oversee every group below that. So any of our 10 unders, we have one developmental group that's kind of 11-12s. That's also in my division, but most of my guys are 10 and under. So I get to work with a good handful of coaches. I love it. I think mentoring and working with other coaches has become probably one of my favorite things about coaching. So I know there are a couple of them that we meet regularly and we talk about their goals and things that they need to do to help reach their goals. So that's kind of been one of my favorite experiences with, being the head developmental coach, is just being able to work with the coaches.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how many pools you're working those little kids out of, and how often you did get to run by and watch what the other coaches were doing and chit chat with them.
We're around like 7 pools around there. Not always. Sometimes that's when we go into long course. We get some long course pools that we don't use in short course time. I don't get to visit them as much as I want, just because my group is almost the same exact time as all those other groups. As much as I can when we do like Christmas training or summer, when our schedule changes for long course, I try and stop in, or if I'm dropping my girls off for practice, picking them up, I'll try and stop in early and hang around. When it comes to like getting to talk with the coaches, a lot of that is just me pushing and initiating. I tell them, hey, let's meet, let's talk about these goals. Like I have a coach that wants to become a head coach eventually. And I sat down and I made up an entire list of skills I think that a head coach should have. And that's something I told you, I reach out to coaches. I sent that list out to about 15 coaches and asked their feedback. Some of them are head age group coaches. Some of them are head coaches. Some of them are just team owners. And they all kind of gave their feedback and gave their input. And so then I gave that list to that coach. And I'm like, okay, where are we starting first? Where are your weaknesses on this list? Where are your strengths on this list? And then it's just me reaching out and saying, okay, let's meet. Let's figure out where you are. COVID's kind of thrown things off a little bit, but I know there's, that coach that I've been talking to, he actually reached out to me. Hey, things are slowing down a little bit, getting into a routine. Can we set up a meeting? Can you come watch my practices? Which I love. He is so filled with just wanting to get better and be better. So he asks me all the time to come watch his practices. And he's the one that kind of reached out to sit down and go over some of his goal stuff again and get back on track.
Well, good deal. At First Colony, as a staff, do you all get together like by Zoom nowadays? Do you get together with head age group coach, senior level coaches in person, or are you Zooming? How do y'all getting your vertical alignments and stuff done?
Well, it's definitely interesting. But yeah, we do weekly Zoom calls with the entire staff. The head coach and the head age group coach and myself, we all kind of, the three of us kind of talk separately throughout. Like the head age group coach and I talk a lot, multiple times a week, just between the two of us. And then with that developmental group that I told you, all those coaches, we meet monthly. And I run just like a developmental division meeting, kind of what are we doing? What are some goals we have? Like one of the things we just recently worked on was developing our why for our division. Thinking like a couple years ago, I did this big team-wide team culture thing. Let's figure out and establish what is our team culture. So we are all on the same page. We're all using the same terminology. That's something I did with the team, and sitting back and thinking about it, I was like, it's interesting. Our division should have its own culture also, its own why for why we do things. And so our last couple of meetings, we spent some time and we developed our own why for our division.
I just wrote an article for the NISCA Journal about mentoring and mentorship. Forbes magazine last month had an article called Why Mentoring Should Be Your New Year's Resolution. Now, you talked about mentoring other people, but how about sharing some of your mentors with us and how they impacted your coaching development?
Yeah, by far my biggest one is Allison Beebe. I was lucky enough to work under her when she was kind of the head coach of FCST. I got to experience the development of Simone Manuel under Allison, and definitely has completely changed, or did completely change the way that I coach. Her patience, her ability to see the big picture is like nothing I have seen with any other coach that I've been able to talk to. She is also, her love and support of coaches education is right in line with me. and just her support of everybody. She is one of those people that if I'm on deck and she knows somebody, she's introducing me. So her ability to network and getting me to see how important it is to network has been huge for my coaching.
Yeah, anybody that hasn't gotten a chance yet should take a look at her ASCA talk from last fall, that virtual clinic they did on the development of Simone. It really was a big picture talk. The development of Simone manual, that was great. The way she took us through it, and
Yes.
she really gave us a really good view of how it's done behind the scenes.
It's amazing. Yeah. And everything she did was so that Simone could go to college and still make progress. You know, she didn't want her to peak when she was in high school. And so to have that big picture is just amazing.
Right.
If we can get a link to that ASCA talk, we will put it in the podcast details so you people that are listening will have something to find it with.
I think you got to be a member.
We'll run our membership commercial for ASCA.
Well, a takeaway from it also was she did say she didn't like people building their resume on age groupers.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was great. You know, hey, you're an age group coach, you're a developmental coach, move them along and make sure that they have what am I trying to say? A foundation so that they have a big upside coming later. You don't want to build your resume on an age grouper. Send them along so that the next level is going to be better, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and so much for her with that is, I mean, she is extremely athlete-centered, but she understands like that's what you need to really build a strong team. You know, it doesn't matter if you have the most amazing 10 and unders ever if they do nothing after that. You know, she really did what was good for the team.
We took a look at some of the top 10 and unders that were national age group record holders and so on a few years back. And we didn't see many of them in the 17, 18 or the older ages. They were, I think, what we refer to not as flashes in the pan, but not too far away from it. You're right. You have to build a foundation. You and Bob both just said the foundation has to be laid so they can have that success later. That delayed gratification that they learn as an age grouper is going to carry them through some older years and sort of some great successes, we hope.
Yes, definitely.
Stay tuned. Swim Talk will be right back.
If you're not a member of the American Swimming Coaches Association, what are you waiting for? ASCA is all about education and support for us swim coaches. Their World Clinic features the top coaches in our sport. Become a member and sign up at swimmingcoach.org.
We've seen your Facebook page, and one thing that Bob and I both noticed is how positive your attitude and your outlook is on everything. You posted something recently, if I'm not going to embarrass you about it, but it was actually, I looked at it as you being a mentor. You posted something and there were 5 questions. One was what went well in that practice? What could go better? Did I connect with the swimmer? What did I learn? Did I take time to listen? These are great questions to ask a coach to help them develop. And so just by posting that, you're displaying your ability to be a mentor without even knowing these coaches. How do you maintain such an optimistic, positive outlook through so much of your activities?
I think it all comes from like you said, it's interesting as positive as you view it. It all comes from me kind of almost being a negative person naturally, because I tell people all the time, I am a recovering perfectionist. You know, my biggest strength and my biggest weakness, everything I see can be better. It is a huge strength, but it is a huge weakness because it can get in the way a lot of times. So I really, a couple of years ago, started to see how the negative thinking was affecting me. Like as a coach, I would go to swim meets and I would be so nervous how the kids were going to perform that I didn't enjoy the meets. And I really didn't like that. I didn't like that about myself. So I started doing more where I was trying to be positive and see the positive and see things differently, be grateful. And I think with the social media, I know that I'm not perfect. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. And I have no problem being vulnerable and sharing that piece about myself if I know that it can help somebody else. I know there are a lot of people out there that struggle with the same thoughts. And these are things that I see that I love that help me become a better person every day. And like I said, the more I can share that with other people, that's what I want to do.
You made one comment that I think probably a lot of young coaches could identify with, if I can read it. It says, I have amazing moments where I sit and think about how far I have come as a coach and as a person. I also have moments where I catch myself too focused on the voice in my head. Talk about that voice in your head.
Yes, that's the voice of, I think I posted something recently where, oh my gosh, this kid isn't swimming well. I have to prove myself to these parents that I'm a good coach, especially as a young coach, right? Like I got to prove to the parents that I know what I'm doing. Just these constant thoughts of, am I doing what's right? Am I connecting with these kids? Am I helping them become better people? Oh my gosh, I just said that and I shouldn't have said that. Just things that are constantly spinning, overthinking and overanalyzing. And I'm just realizing how much time and effort it was taking away. And it was interesting, once I became aware of that, I can almost stop myself now. So it's a skill I'm pretty proud of, that I'm not perfect, but I'm still learning. And it's been a pretty big game changer in my coaching.
That's great. Bob
Okay. Now this was,
yeah, go ahead.
It's a long-winded question. Yeah, and it might be a short answer, maybe not. Expectation for our athletes is that they're practicing to improve, right? That's why they're supposed to be there. For our older kids, that's a shared responsibility. We need to present a workout that gives them an opportunity to improve. At the same time, they should have something in mind that they'd like to focus on improving as well. But when you're coaching the younger kids, you pretty much handle that yourself. Now, how do you help those kids transition into taking on the mindset of ownership of their own improvement, to get to a point where when they get a little older, they're starting to go into practice and say, okay, yes, the coach is presenting something that's supposed to help me improve, but I'm supposed to be working on something myself. I'm supposed to be thinking about something myself. A little itty bitty may not be there. Your job, I guess, is to try to get them there. How do you do it?
Yeah, I think it's baby steps, and it starts kind of from day one. Like when they come to my group, no one else is allowed to put their caps on anymore. They have to put their own caps on, and it's a skill that they have to learn. I'll tell them, like, hey, in the beginning, like, try a couple times and then I will help you, but I'm not going to do it for you. And after so long, I'm not going to do it for you. You got to kind of figure it out. Let me help you. Try this, try that, I talk to the parents as much as I can. I tell them, if they have a question about what event I entered the swimmer in, or if they're going to be missing practice, I tell my parents from the beginning of the season in my parent meeting that the swimmer should be coming and telling me that and asking me those questions. They're 9, 10. I get that. So I'll tell the parents, if you want to send a backup email just to make sure that they do it, that's fine. But I encourage the parents to have them come and talk to me as much as they can. I think the kids got to see that it's a relationship and we got to work together, and I'm there to help them. Accountability. I know one of my favorite things I've been doing is I took a bunch of neon cardstock and I laminated it. And so I put it at the end of every lane. I got some pins. They're like some Japanese chalk pencils, I think is what they are. And so that you can write on the lamination when it's wet and everything. And we will do stuff where if they should be trying to get a certain time, they'll write down their time on the paper. And then after they do the swim, they write down their time, what they actually got. So what they should be trying to get and what they do get. And with the little ones, I found when they see it, it makes a much better connection rather than just me saying, oh, you were 5 seconds off. When they actually saw it in writing, they started to make a big connection, especially with them writing it down. Like recently, I've been doing something where we have like some goal times for 25s, and we'll do some of those 25s. They'll write down what their goal time is on the paper, what it should be before we start the set. And we'll do some of those 25s, and I ask them to write down what was their slowest time. So it's super easy for a 10 and under, right, to say, okay, I'm going to try and go a 14 on this 25. Well, out of 4 25s, they do one that's a 14, and the others are a 19. And to them, they accomplished their goal. I did a goal time. But it was interesting once I put that spin on it. No, I want to know what your slowest time was. That was a pretty big game changer. And again, them writing it down and seeing what the time, what time they should be going and what time they actually went. Making that connection was a pretty big thing. So I think as much as I can with these little guys, getting them to be as self-sufficient as possible and really start to take responsibility for their swimming. Even when it comes to swim meets, telling them to pack their own bags, pack their own snack bags for swim meets, that kind of stuff. And that's something, again, that I tell the parents from the beginning, telling the parents that this is their swimming. They have to take ownership. They have to be responsible for it. And these are some things that you guys can do to kind of help that,
Right. We try to fit the absolutes question in just about every time with our guests. Do you know of something or some things that we've been doing in our sport that you feel that absolutely positively must continue to be done?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, especially as someone that's such a big proponent of continuing education, is just how much coaches share techniques and things that work and things that don't. I love reading stuff when people are questioning certain ways we do certain strokes and sharing ideas about drills and games they're doing. Just the amount of sharing I think that our profession does is pretty awesome. Like I told you, I reach out to people I've never met before. Every single person I have ever reached out to has always emailed me back with pages answering my questions and attached documents and everything else, and said, if you need anything else, please let me know. So I really think just the amount of constantly trying to stay up on technique and getting better at technique and understanding technique and sharing ideas and sharing thoughts is something that I absolutely love about our profession.
True. People really do dissect things really well and do share. I like it. Yeah.
We were watching a video of NCAA championships from about 40 years ago. And when Steve Lundquist was swimming for SMU and Eddie was just getting started at Texas. And the thing that surprised us so much that we didn't even think about was how different off the blocks and off the walls is now with the underwater traveling compared to the way it was then. There were people that were taking a stroke before they hit the flags, but these were national caliber swimmers. So
right.
Some of the things that an absolute, I would guess, would be the streamlining, the fifth stroke, the underwater dolphin kicking. Anything else you can think of in that line that you've seen change, or something that you think we need to move away from?
Oh, interesting. I think sometimes when it comes to like things to move away from is just this idea of like doing more and adding more pool time and adding dryland time and adding all this extra visualization and goal setting that they have to do at home and doubles. And there's a place for everything. Don't get me wrong. There's a place for doubles, a place for dryland, like all that stuff. But sometimes I think we get caught up in just doing more and making the kids do more. And especially with COVID, we've seen like people are doing way less and are being extremely successful with it. And I love that. As a parent myself and somebody that needs that downtime, I have to make myself take the downtime, I've learned. But with a family and, COVID, just doing more is not always necessarily the better thing. So that would probably be something I think that kind of as a culture we could look at.
I'm glad you brought that up, just the single word more, Bob and I talk a lot about our friend up at Austin, Eddie Reese. And Eddie was given a talk one year, and he was talking about how they were trying to do something that he had borrowed from another Texas coach. And instead of more, they were going to do more better. And I always thought, that really makes a lot of sense. What you said about doing more, all the outside stuff, the increasing the water time, increasing the dry land, the goal setting, and so on. But more, better. Do things better. Don't just do more things. I think those two go together, and there's got to be a good balance. Speaking of balance, you made a comment before about needing to have a good work-life balance. That is a key part of maintaining a coaching career, and that sometimes we need to have something going on away from the pool. What do you love to do outside of the sport?
I absolutely love doing like crafty kind of stuff. My new venture is making keychains. I haven't done it yet, so I don't know how it's going to go, but I got, a Cricut machine, and I'm going to get some epoxy. I got my keychains, my acrylic keychains. That's my new venture that I'm going to try and go down. But, I mentioned that I left the sport at one time as a coach, and looking back on it, I realized that I didn't have that balance, and that's why I left. I got burnt out. It was just coaching all the time. And, like as coaches, a lot of times we go home and we don't stop thinking about it. I know I don't. I had a bad practice like last week, and I just sat and thought about it the whole rest of the night and the next day. And so eventually I got tired of that. And what I realized when I came back, it sounds silly, but I made a promise to myself that whenever I was not on deck, I was not going to wear a coaching shirt. I was not going to wear an FCST shirt. I was going to wear just normal clothes that Dana would pick, not Coach Dana, but Dana. So I think finding that balance, knowing what's interesting to you, like, okay, making these keychains sounds kind of interesting to me. I've never done this before. It's going to be a new adventure, and I'm curious about it. I want to see how it's going to go. And so any of those curiosities that I have, I'm taking the time to really explore them, realizing I've got to have a balance. I've got to have time to be a mom. I've got to have time to be a wife. I've got to have time to be Dana, working out, crafts, that kind of stuff. And then I got to have time to be a coach off deck, where I'm working on what I want my group to be doing and thinking about certain sets or looking over some of their practice results. Okay, what is this telling me? So I know that's definitely one of the life lessons I've learned the hard way, obviously leaving the sport and coming back, is that I've got to have balance.
So you say it's important for a coach to have a life away from the pool, is what I'm hearing you saying. What about kids? What about kids? Do they need a life away from the pool too, or are they going to face possible swimmer burnout?
Oh yeah. Like life away from the pool is amazing. And that's why I say sometimes when we keep wanting them to do more, sometimes it makes me sad when I hear some teams have 10-unders doing doubles, or some of the 13, and obviously this is from a girl perspective, but 13, 14 girls having to do like 3 doubles during the summer. And to me, they're missing out on such an important part of life. Like, especially, boys are social also, but girls, they're missing out on all that summertime to just be social and be somebody that's not a swimmer. Like there is so much, it's interesting. There's so much stress and stuff put on the kids when they only see themselves as swimmers. You can see when they fail and their identity is only as a swimmer. If they fail and they have a bad race, they fall completely apart. And this is actually something I've talked to 10 and under parents about. Hey, let's make sure that we're encouraging them that they have identities and they're awesome outside the pool also. So any chance I get to learn about my kids in my group, hey, they play piano, they play baseball, they're in another sport, they're in some academic activity. I tell them when they're swimming, you are awesome. Regardless of how you swim, you are awesome. And I try to learn about and encourage kind of those other identities they have.
Bob,
Points.
you and I were talking recently about the cutback in available pool time impacting a lot of club programs, but the kids are actually getting faster times when they're going to these meets.
Right.
So more is actually being replaced by less, and the kids are a lot of them are getting lifetime best swims at these meets that they're not training that much for. Is that something that we might see continuing after
Well,
things get back to normal type stuff?
I think when we talked to Mike Murray a little bit, it was also part of it was fewer meets and we were
Right.
training more consistently. We might not be getting as much water time, but we're not having as many breaks in that water time. And when we were having meets, it was, hey, 3 up, 3 down, go home. It wasn't these long drawn out meets where, maybe by the time it was over, you're just not feeling real peppy and you weren't swimming real well. That was one of my thoughts. I don't know. I noticed that my kids got their fitness back real quick this summer. We got back in the water in early June, and we cranked out 2-a-days. And by early July, we got our fitness back pretty quick. I was pretty impressed. I don't know how well did your kids do, Dana, first colony when y'all were able to get back in the water?
Same. I think they came back. They were so motivated to be back, and so
That was
grateful to be
part of it,
back and
right.
yeah, and be out of the house, be away from siblings, and then kind of, Dana, what you had said, coaches with COVID and coming back, and I know my practice time is shorter than it usually is. We've been forced into the more better that you were saying with Eddie Reese, like I have had to completely review and analyze how I run my practices because it's shorter. I don't have as much time. So I've had to get more better and change how I do things. So yeah, I think they bounced back pretty well because like I said, I think they're excited to be there, and I as a coach was having to do things differently to take advantage of the less time.
Yeah, shorten the set and just say, hey, instead of X number of descending, we don't have time to do those first couple that are not even going to get your heart rate close to the zone we're looking for. Let's get up there into the heart rate zone we want now, and let's get there and right away and do the work right away. Hey, I'm still thinking about this Lundquist thing. This is a thought, Dana's. Okay, way back. Now, this is way back. This is old time. Okay. I remember an article coming out. I think it was in Swimming Technique, the really, really old journal that came out maybe every 2, 3, maybe even 4 months.
Yeah.
This guy did a study, and it was pretty bogus. It turned out, but dissecting it, okay, said that taking a butterfly stroke off the wall on freestyle was faster. Okay, did all the data. Okay. Well, we know that's not true. But why do you think now, looking back, what possibly could have been happening? This is like back in the late 70s, I think this was done. I think what was happening that in his study that happened was maybe because he was doing dolphin kick streamlining.
Yep.
Yeah. That's probably what made it faster. We didn't know any better. So this guy was a genius, didn't know it. But this guy said it's faster. And I think it was because his study, they were doing dolphin kick. And they didn't know that that's why it was faster. Well, now we know that's why it was faster.
All of us have a lot of thoughts going through our brains all the time. But Dana, you have a habit of writing them on Post-it notes and saving them. And you make a reference to it in one of your Facebook posts. You call it your brain dump Post-it notes. And I can understand writing it down because if I get a great thought every now and then. I think 5 years ago I had a really good one. I didn't write it down. If you don't write it down, you tend to forget it. But you write these things down all the time and you stick them up where you can look at them and reflect on them and make decisions about what to do with them. Tell us a little bit about your brain dump.
Yeah. like I said, I realized that my brain was just constantly going and it was exhausting. So I have packets of Post-it notes everywhere you can imagine, even in my car. And like you said, anytime I think of something, I might hear something that sounds interesting and I write it down because I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to go look that up. I have to go research that. One of the latest ones, and I don't remember where I heard it, was somebody kind of threw out the idea that there's a difference between dolphin kicking and butterfly kicking.
I heard that.
Yeah, I don't remember where I heard it, but I wrote it down. It's on my board over here. And again, it's just something to me that I was so curious. Wow, I never thought about that. I'm going to have to think about that. I'm going to have to play around with that. I write down quotes, ideas. I am always coming up with new ideas. You can ask any of the, developmental coaches that I work with. I'm always coming up with ideas. So let's see. One of my favorite quotes that's kind of sticking out is, "You will never influence the world by trying to be like it." And so any quotes that I find that are just so inspiring, I'll write them down. And then usually I compile them all. I have a bunch on my coaching, and a bunch on being a mom, and a bunch on like this, new venture that I'm working on. And I'll sit down and I'll just compile them all and see what I've got. Okay, I want to research this. Okay, wow, I want to use this. Oh, I don't really need that anymore. And I use those Post-its just to kind of pull it all together.
Yeah, I mentioned something to you in a previous conversation before this podcast recording, that when I was coaching at Katy High School, my JV kids were in the last period of the day, and I was working with them one day, and one of my varsity girls came in when the school day was over, and she's watching the JV kids go back and forth, and just out of the blue, she just cocks her head to the side and goes like, "Susie's backstroke, why does one arm make a different kind of a splash than the other arm?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "Well, just look at her." And I did. And different splashes. And of course, now we can figure out, well, she wasn't entering the water the same on both sides, or she wasn't rotating the same on both sides. But every now and then, you learn something, you get a nugget from an unexpected source.
There's stuff like that all the time for me. That's why I have all the Post-its. Saying that's kind of why you referenced that one post where I said questions that busy coaches can ask themselves. And that's where that one came from. Did I listen today? So yeah, that post, it was 5 questions. And my goal was to make it for busy coaches that you don't have to ask all 5 every day, but you can ask just 1 or 2. And that's where that one came from. Did I listen? Because I think there's constantly, especially the 10 unders, I'll just sit back and listen to and talk to each other. And it's interesting the things I can learn about them that then I can use. I overheard a boy talking to another boy about some video game stuff. Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't realize he liked video games. I can use that to my advantage, and I'll just hear them talking to each other. And I think listening to other coaches on deck when they're talking to their kids at swim meets, listening in.
Well, do you talk to your kids every day? Every
Yes.
kid, do you make that kind of an effort?
Yes. There was a coach here, Terry Fritsch, and he used to, one of his things that he did is when he did his attendance sheet, that's how he took attendance, is, did I talk to this kid today? And as he was going down his attendance sheet and checked by every kid's name, that was his way to check that he talked to everybody. And so that's kind of something I've been doing too. I make it an effort to talk to everybody, whether it's when they come in the door, whether when they leave. I'm talking constantly throughout the practice, walking the deck constantly at practice. So I'm sure it drives my assistant crazy. He gets to one side and starts working, and then I start walking over there, and then he walks to the other side. But yeah, I make it an effort, and that's kind of one of those other questions that's on that post is, did I connect today? That's my goal too. You never know what one thing you're going to say that's going to connect. You never know. I've been in coaching long enough that some of the kids now that I had when they were little are getting married and that kind of stuff, and they'll randomly send a post or send a message about, do you remember when you told me this at this swim meet? I will have no idea what they're talking about, but they know 100% that it happened. So I like I said, I make it a goal to connect or talk to every kid every day because I don't know what's going to connect and what's not. So I got to, get my odds up that something's going to hit. So
it's got to be a good mix of positive comments too.
Oh yeah. Yes. Yep. Positive. That's why I say a lot of times I'll sit and think like, gosh, why did I say that? I could have said that where it maybe didn't come off the way I wanted. I want it to be more of a learning opportunity. It may not have come off that way. So, but yeah, try just as much as I can, hit everything I can. Any swimmer pushing off the wall. Wow, that streamline on that last wall was awesome. Just as I'm walking by.
They need to hear that. I remember when Eddie Reese went to Auburn, he didn't have a very good team, but he wanted to connect with them. Like you mentioned, it's very important to connect. And he said he tried to say 5 positive things every day to every single swimmer. He says, but some days it was hard, and the best he could come up with was like, nice suit.
Yes. Yes. And there are days like that. Definitely. But there's always something. And even if it's telling them bye, if somebody was like, I had some girls that were out for a week for Christmas and they come back and that's the first thing I tell them, I missed you, just letting them know, or some girls that have moved up and I'll go kind of help with their group. And I tell them, I miss you, just letting them know that I'm thinking about them.
On your Facebook post, there's an awful lot of, as I mentioned before, positive things you're saying, but you mentioned being grateful even for little things. And one of the posts that you put up there is a quote from an author, and he says, "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away." And when I read that on your Facebook page, I went, wow, we've got a quote almost like that from Eddie Reese in the book. Have I mentioned it yet on this podcast? Eddie Reese, coaching
what
swimming.
What book do you speak of?
I'm glad you asked. The book that I speak of is Eddie Reese, Coaching, Swimming, Teaching Life by Chuck Warner, assisted
I've
a little
heard of
bit by
him.
me. Yeah, he's a big name. People ask me, how much of the book did I write? And I said, well, mostly I just corrected spelling and drank coffee. Chuck wrote most of the book. But the last quote we have from Eddie, and this is a really good one, and it's a great one to end the book on, and maybe even this podcast, but he said, when you die, the only thing you take with you is that which you've given others. That's the ball game right there. What if we're all able to do that? And I think that attitude comes out in a lot of the stuff that we've heard from you and that we've read that you post in your social media. And I just think that's a great way to look at things. Give away your gift.
Yes. And that's something that really, it's interesting. My coaching philosophy over the years has changed dramatically, which I think it should. And I think it does for a lot of people. And a lot of my philosophy now is that I can have an impact on people way more than myself. People kind of have their word for each year that they come up with. And mine was kind of a phrase last year, and mine was, it's not about you. So anytime I kind of got caught up in something, I would tell myself, it's not about me. What in this situation, what can I do for somebody else? How can I help somebody else? How can I give to somebody else? And that was kind of my theme for last year. So the more I can just help and share and give any of my knowledge that I have, I am willing to give. So it is not mine to keep. And you never know who needs it.
Yeah, I think after people listen to this podcast, you may get a lot of email because your approach and your attitude towards these kids and even the way you look at yourself. I haven't heard anything selfish come out of your mouth tonight.
Well,
it's
that
all
is huge. That means a lot to me.
All about the kids. We talked about you writing a book before, didn't we?
Not writing a book. I would love that. Trust me, that is down the line.
All right.
But for now, I'm just kind of starting a little thing that I might be starting for kind of all the moms out there that have girls in sport. And
we want you to plug any projects you got. So let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Tell us about it.
So it's called Girls Striving Through Sport. And as a female that grew up in sport, there are so many amazing life skills that sport have, right? We all know that. but I think a lot of times they don't really get focused on. We aren't really proactive. I think you have some coaches that are amazing about being proactive about it, and that's a goal of mine. And I think it also has to be a goal of mine as a mother. I can't just assume that the coach is going to be teaching it. So I'm going to try and work on a membership type of thing for all the moms out there that have girls going through sport, and just helping them become the best that they can be, sport, life, whatever it is.
Very good. So this will be a crossover, not just swimmers, anybody.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Well, this episode of Swim Talk, we've been talking with outstanding age group and head developmental coach for First Colony Swim Team, Coach Dana Skelton. Dana, it has been not only a delight to talk with someone who also has my name, but you have been delightful, and I've learned so much, and I'm really enthused about coaching, listening to you talk about the way you do things and how you've learned things, Bob.
Great input. We really appreciate the time, and it was quality right there. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you very much for the invite. You guys are a lot of fun to hang out with.
Well, we told you in our introductory email, it's just like sitting around a campfire with a couple of old friends, or in some comfortable old shoes that don't stink too bad.
Thanks for humoring us has-beens.
Yeah. Well, we'll see you around, and we hope you come back and join us at another time.
All right.
Yeah,
take care.
That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye. You can get in touch with Coach Dana Skelton by email at dana.skelton12@gmail.com, and find her on different social media sites such as Instagram, Dana Skelton _coaching, Facebook, Coach Dana Skelton, Girls Striving Through Sport on Facebook, and Girls Striving Through Sport on Instagram. She'd love to hear from you, and she will get back. If you weren't paying attention before, we'll say it again. This episode of Swim Talk has been brought to you by local animal shelters and rescues in your area. Check them out and offer to foster or adopt today. Rescue pets make some of the best animal companions you could hope for. Don't shop, adopt. And by EddieReesBook.com, your best source to purchase the chronicled life of one of the most praised, successful, and recognized swim coaches in the world, and the best-selling book by Chuck Warner, Eddie Rees, Coaching Swimming, Teaching Life. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.